Imagine this, a place where the chaos of the world finally fades away. The constant buzz of notifications, the never-ending to-do lists, and the pressure to stay ahead, gone. Picture this moment where the relentless chatter in your mind, those looping thoughts and anxieties, just stops. Feels like a dream, doesn't it? But here's the twist. This isn't a far-off retreat you need to book tickets for. It's not hidden in some exotic corner of the world. This sanctuary, it's right here, within you. Now, let's redefine silence. It's not just the absence of noise, it's a profound sense of clarity, a stillness that grounds you in the now. It's not about shushing the outside world, it's about quieting the inside one. You might be wondering, isn't silence just quiet? Sure, in a basic sense it is. But in Buddhism, silence is transformative. It's not passive, it's powerful. It's a tool, a bridge to understanding your truest self beneath all the noise. So, why does silence hold such deep significance in Buddhist wisdom? How can something as simple as stillness unlock a profound sense of peace? And perhaps most importantly, how does this silence reveal who you truly are? Today, we're diving deep into these questions. This isn't just about meditating or sitting in a quiet room. It's about learning to truly listen to your thoughts, your emotions, your essence, and discovering how that listening can bring you balance, growth, and inner peace. In Buddhism, silence is considered one of the highest forms of wisdom, not because it hushes the world, but because it stills the mind. There's even a special term for this, noble silence. It's not simply about muting sounds or holding back words. It's a mental state where you stop chasing distractions, judgments, and the endless loops of thought. The Buddha himself embodied this. When he first encountered the 5 monks who would become his disciples, he didn't preach. He didn't argue. He simply sat in silent meditation, letting his stillness speak volumes. That's the kind of silence we're exploring today, a silence that transforms not just how you live, but how you are. Lesson 1. The power of words and silence in Buddhism. When was the last time you truly sat in silence? Not the silence of a paused conversation or the quiet before you fall asleep, but the profound stillness where the noise of the world and the chatter of your mind fall away. In the whirlwind of life, silence is often mistaken for emptiness. But in Buddhism, silence is a profound teacher. It is not the absence of sound, but the presence of understanding. As the Buddha said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." Silence, when embraced, is that word. In Buddhist teachings, words are seen as tools. They can inspire love or sow discord, heal wounds or deepen them. But silence is different. It transcends words, creating space for wisdom to arise. Silence does not distort. It reveals the truth as it is. Monks often practice noble silence during meditation, allowing them to observe the mind without judgment. It is within this sacred stillness that clarity blooms, much like a lotus emerging from muddy waters. Now, consider your own life. Our days are filled with endless notifications, conversations, and distractions. We are bombarded by noise, not just external, but internal, as our minds race with thoughts, worries, and self-criticism. This constant chatter drains our energy and clouds our ability to listen, both to others and to ourselves. Imagine what could change if you chose silence instead of reacting. Silence is not passivity. It's a way to recalibrate your intentions and respond with compassion. How can we invite silence into our noisy lives? Here are 3 simple steps. Morning stillness. Start your day with 5 minutes of silence. Sit, breathe, and let your mind settle. Pause before speaking. When you feel the urge to respond hastily, take a moment of silence. Reflect on whether your words will inspire or harm. Daily mindful breaks. Step away from the noise. Put down your phone, turn off the music, and simply be. These small practices help cultivate silence as a habit, allowing deeper wisdom to guide your actions. There's a tale of a monk who sat by a river in silence day after day. A frustrated villager asked, "Why don't you speak?" The monk smiled and pointed at the water, saying, "Watch." The villager stared as the ripples faded, leaving the surface still and clear. "Only in stillness can you see the bottom," the monk explained. Silence is not weakness, it is strength. It is the foundation of understanding, compassion, and peace. So ask yourself, what truth is waiting to emerge from the stillness within you? Embrace silence, and you are just a few moments away from discovering the wisdom you never knew you had. Understanding noble silence. Have you ever wondered why silence feels so uncomfortable? In today's fast-paced world, we fill every moment with sound, music, conversations, notifications, afraid of what might surface in the quiet. But in Buddhism, silence is not something to fear, it's a gateway to profound clarity. This is where the concept of noble silence takes center stage. It's not merely the absence of sound, but a deliberate practice of quieting the mind. It is a state free from judgment, distraction, and attachment to our ceaseless thoughts. When embraced, noble silence becomes a powerful tool for seeing life as it truly is, unfiltered by the chaos of our inner dialogue. In Buddhist teachings, noble silence is rooted in the example of the Buddha himself. It's said that during one of his discourses, a disciple asked a complex question about existence. Instead of answering, the Buddha sat in silence. At first, his followers were confused, but over time, they understood. Words can explain, but stillness can reveal. Silence, in its purest form, allows truths to arise naturally, without distortion. Think about your own life. How often do you judge a moment, label it as good or bad, or get carried away by assumptions? This mental chatter creates noise that separates you from the present. Noble silence interrupts this cycle. It is not about suppressing your thoughts, but stepping back to observe them without attachment. In this space, you can begin to see clearly. The beauty of noble silence lies in its simplicity. You don't need elaborate rituals to access it. Start with these small steps. Create quiet moments. Dedicate 10 minutes a day to silence. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and focus on your breath. Practice non-judgment. When thoughts arise, don't push them away or follow them. Simply notice them and return to your breath. Carry silence into your day. Before reacting to a situation, pause. Ask yourself, am I seeing this clearly? That moment of stillness can transform your perspective. A story illustrates this beautifully. A student once asked a Zen master, "What is enlightenment?" The master held up a cup of water and stayed silent. The student waited until the water settled completely. Then the master said, "When the mind is still, everything becomes clear." Silence is not a void. It is fullness without noise. In noble silence, you find clarity, understanding, and the courage to face life as it truly is. So ask yourself, when will you begin to embrace the stillness within? Finding peace beyond noise. When was the last time you truly stopped? Stopped running, stopped scrolling, stopped trying to keep up with the relentless demands of the world? In today's overstimulated, hyperproductive society, silence feels almost alien, a void we're afraid to fall into. But silence isn't a void, it's a refuge. It's the place where you meet yourself. In Buddhist philosophy, silence is sacred. It's not just the absence of noise, but a deliberate act of stillness, a sanctuary where the mind can rest and recalibrate. When we embrace silence, we resist the pressure to constantly produce, consume, and achieve. We begin to peel back the layers of societal expectations and reconnect with what truly matters. Imagine a turbulent lake, its surface restless and wild. You cannot see the bottom, no matter how hard you try. But if you wait, if you allow the water to settle, the clarity emerges. Silence is the stillness that calms the turbulence of the mind. It doesn't erase our thoughts or emotions, but gives them the space to unfold naturally. In this stillness, the truths hidden beneath the surface of our busy lives become visible. In our noisy world, we often mistake movement for progress and busyness for purpose. We fill every moment with distractions, trying to avoid discomfort or stillness. But here's the paradox. The peace we seek in the external world is already within us, waiting to be uncovered. Silence helps us find it. Here are 3 ways you can start finding peace beyond the noise. Dedicate time to stillness. Set aside 15 minutes daily to simply sit in silence. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and allow yourself to be present. Disconnect to reconnect. Turn off your devices for an hour each day. Without the distractions of notifications or screens, let yourself notice the beauty of the present moment. Pause amid chaos. The next time life feels overwhelming, stop for a moment. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, what truly matters right now? There's a story of a wanderer who sought wisdom from a Zen master. The wanderer asked, "How do I find peace?" The master handed him a bowl of water and said, "Stir it." As the wanderer stirred, the water grew cloudy. The master then said, "Now let it sit." Slowly, the water became clear. "Peace," the master said, "is what remains when you stop stirring." Silence is not an escape from life. It's a return to it. It's a place where clarity, balance, and resilience are born. So ask yourself, when will you allow your mind to settle and see what lies beneath? The practice of self-awareness. When was the last time you truly sat with yourself in complete silence? No distractions, no conversations, just you and your thoughts. For many, this idea feels daunting, yet silence holds the key to one of life's greatest gifts, self-awareness. In Buddhism, silence is not an escape from life's noise, but a mirror reflecting it. It shows us the patterns of our thoughts, the depth of our emotions, and the triggers that shape our actions. In silence, we observe without judgment, and through this observation, we come to know ourselves, not the self defined by societal expectations, but the one that exists beneath the layers of external influence. Consider this. In a world that constantly demands us to conform, produce, and please, how often do we pause to ask, who am I? What do I value? Silence creates the space for these questions to arise. And in that space, as the Buddha taught, we meet ourselves. Self-awareness cultivated through silence is transformative. When we sit quietly and let our thoughts surface, we begin to notice patterns. Maybe you see how often you criticize yourself or how quickly you react to frustration. These observations are not meant to shame, but to guide. By seeing clearly, we gain the power to change. How can you bring this practice into your life? Start with 3 steps. Daily reflection. Set aside 10 minutes each day to sit in silence. As thoughts arise, observe them without trying to fix or control them. Awareness. Journaling. After your silent practice, jot down recurring themes or emotions. Over time, you'll notice patterns that reveal deeper truths about yourself. Pause before reacting. The next time you feel triggered by a situation, pause. In that silent moment, ask yourself, what am I feeling and why? This awareness can lead to more thoughtful responses. There's a story of a monk who carried a heavy bag everywhere he went. When asked why, he replied, "This bag is my mind, heavy with thoughts I've never unpacked." One day, he sat in silence, opened the bag, and began to empty it. Over time, his load lightened, and so did his heart. Silence teaches us self-acceptance. In stillness, we see not only our struggles, but also our strengths. We align with our true values and let go of what doesn't serve us. And from this place of awareness, we make decisions rooted in clarity and compassion. So the question is, when will you make time to sit with your own silence and meet the person waiting within? Internal versus external noise. When you think of silence, what comes to mind? Is it the absence of sound in a quiet room, the stillness of a forest at dawn? While external silence is soothing, true silence begins within. The external world may be noisy, but often it only mirrors the chaos inside us. In Buddhism, this internal noise, the constant chatter of thoughts, doubts, and judgments, is seen as the root of much of our suffering. We live in a world that encourages endless stimulation, but rarely are we taught to pause and listen to the noise within. And here's the paradox. We chase peace in the external world while ignoring the turmoil in our minds. Imagine sitting by a lake. You're surrounded by serenity, but the surface of the water is restless, rippling with every breeze. No matter how quiet the surroundings are, you can't see through the turbulence. This is what happens when our internal noise takes over. It doesn't matter how peaceful the environment is, we carry the storm with us. But the opposite is also true. When the mind is calm, no amount of external noise can disturb your inner stillness. This is the essence of Buddhist wisdom. Peace is not found by controlling the outside world, but by cultivating silence within. How do we quiet this internal noise? It starts with mindfulness. When you practice mindfulness, you become the observer of your thoughts rather than their captive. Instead of drowning in overthinking, you learn to watch your thoughts come and go, like clouds drifting across the sky. One simple practice is mindful breathwork. Try this. Close your eyes and focus on your breath. Inhale deeply through your nose, feeling the air fill your lungs, then exhale slowly through your mouth. As you breathe, notice how the mind begins to settle, like a lake becoming still. Another tool is the practice of intentional pauses. Throughout your day, take a moment to stop and simply be. When distractions pull you in multiple directions, ask yourself, what is essential right now? This simple question can ground you in the present moment, silencing the unnecessary noise. A Zen story captures this beautifully. A man approached a wise teacher and said, "My mind is loud with worries and thoughts. How do I find peace?" The teacher handed him a cup of tea and said, "Pour it until it's full." The man poured, but the teacher did not stop him. Tea spilled over the edges, and the man exclaimed, "It's overflowing." The teacher smiled. "Like your mind," he said. "You must first stop pouring before it can hold peace." Learning to quiet the internal chatter isn't easy, but it's liberating. When you cultivate inner stillness, you're no longer at the mercy of distractions or overthinking. You gain clarity, focus, and a deeper connection to your true self. So, ask yourself, what would your life look like if the storm inside you settled? The world's noise might continue, but it will no longer define your experience. Silence begins within, and within, it transforms everything. Silence as a mirror for the mind. Have you ever stood by a perfectly still lake and marveled at how clearly it reflects the sky above? The mountains, the clouds, even the smallest details are mirrored with such precision that it feels like looking into another world. But if the water is disturbed by wind, rain, or ripples, this reflection becomes distorted, unclear. Silence, in much the same way, serves as a mirror for the mind. In our fast-paced lives, our minds are often like churning waters, filled with ripples of overthinking, self-doubt, and fleeting emotions. We're so caught up in this noise that we mistake it for who we are. Buddhist teachings remind us that these thoughts and feelings are not the essence of our being. Instead, they are like clouds drifting across the sky, impermanent, ever-changing. And silence is the stillness that allows us to observe them clearly. One of the core practices in Buddhist meditation is learning to observe the mind without attachment. Sit in silence, and you'll notice the steady stream of thoughts that arise. At first, it can be overwhelming. You might think, why can't I quiet my mind? But the goal isn't to stop the thoughts. It's to see them for what they are, passing phenomena, not reflections of your true self. This shift in perspective is powerful. Imagine catching yourself in a moment of self-criticism, thinking, I always mess things up. Instead of spiraling into negativity, silence teaches you to step back and observe, there's that familiar thought again. You see it without judgment, and in doing so, you break its hold over you. To integrate this wisdom into your daily life, start with these 3 steps. Set aside time for silence. Even 10 minutes a day can make a difference. Sit quietly, close your eyes, and focus on your breath. Watch your thoughts without engaging with them. Reframe emotional reactions. When you feel anger, sadness, or frustration, pause. In that silence, remind yourself, this emotion is passing, not permanent. Practice detachment. When self-critical thoughts arise, treat them like passing clouds. They may linger, but they are not the sky. There's a Zen parable that illustrates this beautifully. A monk sat by a river, watching leaves drift by. Another monk approached and asked, "Why do you sit in silence every day?" The first monk pointed to the water and said, "When the river is still, I can see the leaves float by without getting swept away. In silence, I see my thoughts the same way, passing but not defining me." Silence, like the stillness of a calm lake, reveals the clarity that lies beneath the surface. It allows you to see your mind as it truly is, not as the chaos it often feels like. By embracing silence, you find freedom from the mental noise that distorts your reality. So, the question is, when will you stop and let the waters of your mind settle? In that stillness, you will discover the clarity and freedom you've been searching for all along. Opening your heart. When was the last time you truly listened, not to the world around you, but to your own heart? Often, we drown out our deepest emotions with distractions, afraid of what might surface in moments of quiet. But what if I told you that silence is not something to fear, but a sanctuary, a space where even the most difficult emotions can find peace and release? Silence has a unique power to nurture the heart. In Buddhist teachings, it is said that silence creates room for the full range of our emotions to arise without judgment. Fear, sadness, anger. These aren't enemies to be defeated, but messengers carrying important truths. When we allow ourselves to sit with these feelings in silence, we can meet them with the kind of compassion that heals rather than hurts. This practice is embodied in the Buddhist principle of metta, or loving kindness. Metta begins with ourselves, extending compassion toward our own pain, our mistakes, and our imperfections. In the stillness of silence, we can hold space for the emotions we often push away. Instead of saying, "I shouldn't feel this way," we learn to say, "It's okay to feel this. I am human." Imagine carrying a heavy bag filled with stones. Each stone represents a suppressed emotion, grief you didn't allow yourself to feel, anger you couldn't express, fear you avoided confronting. Over time, the weight becomes unbearable. Silence is like setting the bag down one stone at a time. It's not about fixing the emotions, but simply giving them permission to exist, to be seen, and ultimately, to be released. Here's how you can begin to open your heart through silence. Sit with your emotions. Find a quiet space where you won't be interrupted. As you sit in silence, notice what emotions come up. Instead of resisting them, breathe deeply and allow them to flow. Practice loving kindness. Meditation. Silently repeat phrases like, "May I be well, may I be happy, may I be free from suffering." This simple practice nurtures compassion for yourself and others. Reflect without judgment. When discomfort arises, ask yourself, what is this emotion teaching me? Embrace it as a guide, not an obstacle. There's a story of a young monk who struggled with anger. His teacher advised him to sit by a tree in silence each morning and simply feel whatever came up. At first, the anger felt unbearable, but over time, he noticed it softened. In its place grew a deep sense of compassion for himself and for those who had hurt him. Through silence, his heart began to open. Silence doesn't just quiet the mind, it softens the heart. It helps us transform discomfort into understanding, pain into healing, and isolation into connection. When we meet our emotions with kindness, we deepen our capacity to extend that kindness to others. So ask yourself, what emotions have you been carrying? When will you allow silence to help you set them down and open your heart? In that stillness, you'll find not only healing, but the strength to love more deeply than ever before. Practical ways to embrace silence. In a world that thrives on constant noise and ceaseless communication, the idea of silence can feel almost revolutionary. Yet silence holds immense transformative power, a sanctuary for the mind, a balm for the heart, and a path to deeper clarity. But how do we begin to embrace silence in our busy, noisy lives? The truth is, you don't need to retreat to a monastery or escape to a remote mountain to find silence. Even in the midst of chaos, small, intentional steps can bring profound peace. Start with the 5-minute rule. Every day, take just 5 minutes to sit quietly. No phone, no music, no distractions, just you and the present moment. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let the world fade into the background. These brief moments of silence may seem small, but they act as anchors, helping you recalibrate amidst life's demands. Another powerful practice is mindful listening. Too often, we listen only to respond, filling the spaces between words with our own thoughts and opinions. But true connection arises when we pause and listen fully. The next time you're in a conversation, resist the urge to interrupt or fill the silence. Simply be present and attentive. You'll be amazed at how this deepens your relationships and allows you to hear not just words, but the emotions and intentions behind them. For self-reflection, silence is a gateway to clarity. Consider integrating silent journaling into your routine. Set aside time to write about your thoughts and feelings without judgment. This process helps you untangle the knots of your mind, uncovering insights that often get lost in the noise of daily life. Meditation, too, is an invaluable tool. Even a few minutes of focusing on your breath can quiet mental chatter, creating space for greater awareness and understanding. What if your environment is noisy? Many of us live in bustling cities or busy households where silence feels unattainable. In these cases, use tools to create your own quiet space. Noise-canceling headphones can block out distractions, offering a bubble of calm wherever you are. Silent walks in nature, even for a short time, reconnect you with the stillness of the natural world. The sound of rustling leaves or birdsong can be a gentle reminder that silence doesn't have to mean total absence of sound. It's about finding harmony within the noise. There's a story in Zen Buddhism about a student who asked his master, "How do I find peace in a noisy world?" The master handed him a bowl and said, "Go to the river and wait until the water settles." The student waited, and as the silt settled, the water became clear. The master explained, "Silence is like the still water. It clears the noise within so you can see your true reflection. By embracing silence, even in small ways, you'll discover a profound sense of balance and resilience. It's not about isolating yourself from the world, but about creating moments of stillness within it." So, ask yourself, how can you bring silence into your life today? Begin with a few minutes and watch as those moments expand into clarity, peace, and profound connection with yourself and others. Stories of transformation through silence. Under the Bodhi tree, amidst the stillness of the night, the Buddha attained enlightenment. He didn't find it through grand speeches or elaborate rituals, but through profound silence. It was in this quiet space that he came to understand the nature of suffering and the path to liberation. This story serves as a timeless reminder. Silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's the presence of truth. But you don't have to be a spiritual master to experience the transformative power of silence. Take Aya, a woman overwhelmed by the endless demands of her career and family. Anxiety and stress had become her constant companions. Desperate for relief, she decided to dedicate 1 hour each week to silence. No emails, no phone, no distractions, just her, sitting quietly in her favorite park. At first, her mind raced with worries and to-do lists, but over time, the stillness began to work its magic. Aya found that these moments of quiet reflection allowed her to process her emotions, reset her intentions, and rediscover a sense of inner peace. Modern practices like silent retreats echo the Buddha's journey. These retreats, where participants commit to days or even weeks of silence, often lead to profound personal transformation. People who enter feeling disconnected and overwhelmed emerge with a renewed sense of clarity and purpose. One participant described it as like meeting yourself for the first time. Without the constant chatter of the outside world, they were finally able to hear their own inner voice. These stories aren't just inspiring, they're practical. They show us that silence isn't reserved for monks or retreats. It's a tool we all have access to, whether it's through a quiet moment in the morning, a walk in nature, or simply turning off the noise for a few minutes a day. So how can you start harnessing the power of silence in your own life? Begin small, like Aya did, with just a few minutes each day. Choose a space where you feel safe and undisturbed. Close your eyes, focus on your breath, and allow the stillness to settle over you. Observe your thoughts without judgment, like clouds passing in the sky. As you deepen this practice, you may find that silence becomes not just a habit, but a refuge, a place where you can process your emotions, find clarity, and reconnect with your deeper self. And just like the Buddha under the Bodhi tree, you might discover insights and truths that transform your perspective on life. Silence is more than just a practice. It's a pathway to profound peace, clarity, and connection. It's in this stillness that we find the courage to face our emotions, the wisdom to understand our experiences, and the strength to move forward with intention and grace. Whether it's a quiet moment in the morning or a deeper commitment to mindful silence, embracing this practice has the power to transform not just our minds, but our entire way of being. So, why not start today? Allow silence to be your teacher, your guide, and your sanctuary. Share your thoughts on this practice in the comments below. And if you found this video inspiring, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Deep Wisdom for more insights on living a peaceful and purposeful life. Remember, the answers you seek may already be within you. All you need to do is listen.